Hello and welcome to episode 5 of A Bite of Education. Today we're going to be talking about digital literacy and using Google Classroom to deliver that. Jamie works in education and he's got some information on how he thinks that multiple apps using the virtual learning environment can help deliver that. So welcome, Jamie. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. I think it's really interesting, and really exciting, and what Google Classroom can kind of offer as a virtual learning environment. It's not perfect by any stretches of the imagination, but in terms of integration and easy use, and of course, the cost of it is very, very little. The only cost is kind of setting up with your IT technician. I think it's a great resource that people need to know about. So yeah.
Good, good. There are other virtual learning environments out there,
Yeah.
but we are definitely an advocate for Google Classroom. I like it because, from a technical point of view, we can get a school up and running pretty quickly. I know that a lot of people are using Teams out there for their day-to-day communication within faculty. What I like about Google Classroom is it's specifically made for education, as opposed to Teams, which again works really well, but at the same point, I feel it's adapted to the education system as opposed to made for it. So that's my take on it. So delivering digital literacy using Google Classroom, what when you hear that you've got to deliver digital literacy and you think as an educator, okay, right, I've got a load of steps that I've got to achieve. What's the first thing that goes into your head? Do you think how you can consolidate all those different elements and find a single point of attack or delivery that you can use to let's say mark off the requirements of that curriculum? Is that what you do?
To a certain extent, obviously, you have to kind of, when you look at the computing curriculum that's set out by the government, you look at the different aspects and the different things that they want you to cover. But I think digital literacy is such a wide subject nowadays and ever growing, ever bigger with the nature of technology, and the more we need to know and the more that we need to have and the more skills that we need. I kind of think it more of a, rather than teaching digital literacy, so teaching a child how to make a Word document, teaching a child how to make a PowerPoint presentation. It's more about whether the child is able to use the skills and apply them. So I would, for example, when I'm teaching a lesson, I wouldn't go and spend an hour teaching a child how to make a PowerPoint presentation with loads of animations. To be honest, what is that really teaching a child? Not a lot. But a child will remember if you ask them to make a PowerPoint presentation about what they've learned in history and then stand up at the front of the class and talk to the children in their classroom about it. So the use of digital literacy goes far beyond it being a strand of the computing curriculum. It goes to an extent of how can I use computers and technological resources to deliver the curriculum in a much wider and much more, what's the word, collaborative way, I think is the way I look at it. Other people may have different views, and I think digital literacy is an important part of the computer curriculum, and we do need to teach it. But at the same time, I think it's massively important that we don't get bogged down in the assumption that we just have to teach a lesson saying, okay, this is how you make a Google document. I mean, great, child's learn how to make something in bold, underline something, but in the long term, I think a child's much more going to value the skills of being able to use a document for lots of different purposes rather than knowing how to make a PowerPoint slide turn into an origami bird and fly off the screen.
Okay. So if I get this right, the Skills for Jobs document that came out. So even at a really young age in primary school, the end target is to give them foundational skills and a solid understanding and a a base and core knowledge of the infrastructure and the theory behind using word processing, presentation documents, whatever, is going to be a much more useful and long-lasting tool than looking at the intricacies and curioso bits that they can do within the application.
Yeah, I think you've hit it on the nail on the head there, kind of thing. It's definitely, and I know you've said to me in the past about STEM jobs and the rising need for people going into STEM jobs and the increasing need for, like, if I think about it, I use technology every single day I go to work, and I'm sure that most of the people do. I think from my perspective, in the way that I've structured the curriculum at our setting, it's very much, how is this going to help a child in later life? And if you're not teaching a child to have skills that they're going to use later on, what's the point? And I think that's incredibly important. And I think it's a good way to kind of look at things. I will hold my hands up and say I've taught lessons in the past where I've thought, child's never going to use that again.
Algebra was one at school.
Why
but we all use algebra every day by using them as a variable and setting, this equals that, but this plus that equals that. It is. But okay, so if I take something like coding, and I know that I've seen schools that jump in and they need to tick off like do loops, repeats, certain elements of coding. I think that sometimes we go straight into those bits of knowledge without the child understanding or having the orientation knowledge of the platform that they're using to do the coding. So when it comes to using the device and comes to them going at home and trying to move on to those next steps, they don't know where to start. And it's this conversation that you and I and Paul had. Actually, no, you and I specifically had, in the fact that we were talking about some of the applications. I think it was Codol, but we were talking about that. And it's so huge and so vast and so much in there that knowing where to start is the key. So if we can get that fundamental knowledge of the platform that they're using and the core purposes of using that, something like a PowerPoint. I think back in the day when we were teaching just children to create a PowerPoint, the initial purpose was, let's create a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
When really the initial purpose in my head should be, let's make ourselves solid on PowerPoint. So you can go off and play with PowerPoint at home. I've done it with my son, and especially during lockdown. So doing the quizzes. So he was then doing his own quizzes, and he's there consistently refining and increasing his skill level with PowerPoint, because he's enjoying it, but he feels solid in the foundational knowledge of being able to use the application. And that's where I think it can get lost sometimes, in the fact that we talk about the intricacies and the functions and all the little bits that you can do with PowerPoint without thinking, well, let's just understand how the application works in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I think that's I think across the board that links into lots of things. For example, when you use a spreadsheet, like, I know everybody sat through a IT unit of work where the teacher will talk about what a spreadsheet is, what a formula is, what a pie chart is, and gets them to make a spreadsheet about their class. I mean, it's a classic. It's a good way to expose the children to using a spreadsheet. But in terms of my focus, I know I'm doing spreadsheets in the next half term. And when I've been structuring my medium-term plans and looking at what I'm going to be looking at, I've structured it in a way that they're not just using spreadsheets for the sake of using spreadsheets. There's an actual purpose. So, for example, in year 6, I've spent time planning this project, and I'm more than happy to share this with people if they want to drop us a comment. And it's a 4-week project for the last 5-week term, in which children are going to use spreadsheets. They're going to use presentation software of their choice, whether that be Prezi, PowerPoint, Google Slides, whatever they want to use. and they're gonna create a project. So they're gonna create a product. They're gonna have to do research into how much this product's gonna cost. Use a spreadsheet to total up the cost of this product. Create graphs and create bar charts and create different presentation mediums to put into a presentation that then they will share with the rest of the class. And the real world applications of those skills that they will have in those 4 weeks are endless. How many times are we needed in the world of work to make a presentation to share ideas? How many times are we needed to work out whether something's cost effective? I mean, when I first moved out, I needed to make a spreadsheet to work out whether I could afford to. And it's those simple skills that I want the children in my school to have when they leave year 6, so that I know that going on further in life, they're going to be confident. If they need to come and use those things, they're going to have a basic level of understanding to be able to succeed. I think it's the key thing.
Yeah, I think especially with like your children are going to go to secondary education after they finish your assessing, and they're going to have to do more and more of this. I mean, digital literacy is going to be more of a standard, and after the white paper that came out from Ofsted, the infrastructure that the connected classroom stuff that schools are doing and the DfE are doing, and just how much technology is impacting our lives. The core understanding of what technology is and how it's used every day is going to be more and more important. I mean, I always think that data is a huge one that doesn't get enough airtime in primary schools, because it's so important. Understanding big data, understanding how to protect your data, understanding what people will use it for, and how much it affects your life moving forward. Everybody's been here, I'm sure, where you have not searched for something, you said out loud, you know what? I fancy some fried chicken. And the next thing you know, you open your phone and there's like fried chicken adverts coming across.
Yeah.
And everybody's had those moments, but understanding why that happens is something that I think we need children to be clued up on, and have a base knowledge, so they, when they get into secondary school and when they get into working life, understanding how your data is used and protected online. You see it all the time with, I think, the new Apple advert where it's got the auction, isn't it? Auction of somebody's data, and then the girl shuts that off. It is something that gets overlooked. But I can also understand, conversely, how it is hard for staff to understand and think, how are children going to understand big data, and that comes from giving a foundational knowledge of the applications and the systems that you use for digital literacy, and using on an everyday, just using that you use every day.
Yeah.
So if I take, you have got what have you got to chalk off in your digital literacy stuff for? I know.
I'll share my screen now and put up that little thing I showed you a moment ago, which kind of gives an interesting look into kind of what we look at as a school, to kind of not chop off, but as in chalk off as you work along. So if we look at the screen now, we've got 5 different points. So on the computing curriculum, we look at different things, but if we want to sum it up very, very simply, for a child to be secure and digitally literate, that's a bit of a tongue twister, they're able to find, sort, evaluate, manage, and create effectively and safely, kind of linking into what you spoke about a minute ago, different mediums and different things whilst using a computer. It all ties into the uses of computers and how we use them to create, manipulate, evaluate, but also how we use them sensibly, considerately, and also how we think about the effects of what we use and what we share online can have on other people. And I think that's an incredibly important part of what we do when we're teaching the computing curriculum. Is everything is underpinned by that online safety, but also, as you said about the data. I mean, as soon as something's out there, it's out there. It's never coming back. You're never getting it back. It's going to be online for the rest of your life. And one simple comment, one simple post, one simple video can change your life. And I think that's kind of how I put it to my kids when I educate them. And when we talk about these things, it's all about having honest conversations. And I mean, even as adults, I've had honest conversations with my parents about Facebook and Instagram and the things that they've shared on there. And I've gone, well, you've shared that. You can delete it now, but is that really the kind of person you are? You've just shared a funny video that's actually humiliating somebody else. Would you do that if you saw them face to face? Probably not. And it's interesting to have those conversations with children and with adults about how data and how these different things can be shared. And digital literacy underpins everything. Every single thing that you do on the computing curriculum, in some way, is linked to digital literacy because it's using a computer. So yeah, and I think it's incredibly important, so important. And I don't think people quite realise how important it's going to become over the next couple of years.
Yeah. So we were talking about Google Classroom as being a great home base for delivering the computing curriculum and digital literacy in particular, because I think it's something that a lot of people know. Exactly, you can still do exactly the same with Teams, but you can have. Let me see if I can. Well, have you got your screen open? No.
No, I think I stopped sharing it.
Okay. So if I just add this to the screen, add to stream, perfect. So straight away, you've got a single point of contact for all for your entire class. So if I go here, simply to create a class, you can click on plus, click create class, and you can give the class a name. This is just going to be BOE class. Right, so I click that, click create. I'll give that a few seconds to sort itself out. Once that's created, you can start creating a look and a feel that makes it more homely by clicking on customize. It's giving me a load of instructions and tips. Let's give it a different color. I can select a photo. Let's go here, select class theme. And let's go purple and go save. Right, I can generate a Meet link if I wanted to have the videos, but for now, or you can click on the class code, that'll open up, and the children can go to classroom.google.com on their device and put in the click on the plus and click on join, and then put in this code. Alternatively, from people, you can click here and go add students and put in their credentials, right? So with that done, you've then created your base point. So from here, you can click on create, you can create an assignment, and you can give it a, I've got it, Diglit. So from this point here, you can start dropping in some instructions. Please fill out the, please read the document for instructions. And then you can start creating documents from there. So docs, and that'll open up, and you can start creating digital literacy documents right from the off. and you can share that with your class or your students, and away you go. But it's a single point of reference for all your children. Just makes it nice and a place they can constantly go back to. Here you can drop in videos of how to do it. You can give instruction, and it allows a passive resource. Like I said with the training I do, that the children can consistently come back to, whether they're in school, out of school, whatever. So this is why I like Google Classroom. And I imagine, if I'm right, Jamie, when you're delivering those pieces of requirements for your digital literacy, is that how you build it within Google Classroom?
Yeah, and I mean, as soon as you've posted something, it's available to all your children. And then the other amazing thing about Google Classroom is, and especially from a teacher's point of view, as soon as a child started a Google document, it will save that work automatically. The only way that a child can delete their work is by pressing the X on their file, and it will automatically save as they go along. And the other amazing thing about Google Classroom is, once a child submitted a piece of work, or once they've started a piece of work, inside your Google Drive, there will be a folder called Classroom. As soon as you create a class, there'll be a folder there that's called Classroom. And any work that you post via assignment, Google will automatically sort into folders for you. And then you'll be able to see the different work that the children have created. Which is in terms of being able to actually, if somebody came and asked you, okay, so what have the children done for digital literacy this term across the school? You go onto your Google Drive, you click on Classroom, you click on digital literacy, and you hand the computer to them and go, they've done this. In terms of ease of access, and also not having to print everything and put it in floor books and put it in folders and put it in all of these different resources that people use to evidence the computing curriculum, I think it's an amazing resource. Another alternative is Seesaw, which is what lots of other people use, and it's a very similar kind of online platform that you can use to evidence work. But in terms of ourselves, James, we're definitely Google advocates, both Google educators, and we both use the Google tools. Google Classroom is an amazing resource as a part of an integration, and I know there's access to all these third-party apps, which means apps not created by Google, that people can use to access all different parts of the curriculum, not just the computing curriculum, is what we'll kind of lead on to next. If I just share my screen, let's have a look. Window, PowerPoint, and then I just whiz through to this slide. As you can see on...
Oh, it's gone, mate.
I've clicked something. What have I done there? Let's try again. I think it's because I pressed escape. Share. It's back. Is it back? Can you see it?
I have to add it to the screen, mate. So there you go.
There we go. Right. Okay. So as you can see on the screen, we've got just a few different things that I've used this year, which will expand further in the next academic year. But BandLab is a third-party app that can be used to create music. It's completely free, very easy to set up for your class. All you have to do is create an educator account, which is free. And BandLab for Education is free for all educators and for children using it in an educational setting. You go onto BandLab, you create your account, you create a classroom. It's all very simple. They'll walk you through it and give you examples on how to do it. And as soon as you created your class, you set a link, as James showed earlier when he was going through the assignments. There's an option to click link. You set this link into your Google Classroom. Children log into their Google Classroom. They click on the link, and automatically they are logged into this software using their Google accounts. And it's an amazing resource that children are able to create different music using free DAW software, which is amazing. We've talked about code.org, so I won't really mention that again. And we've also talked about Tinkercad before. I know that Paul, who's not here tonight, is somewhere on a lake or on a canal somewhere. He's a massive advocate for Tinkercad, but that piece of software has endless cross-curricular links, art, design, technology, science, and also the information and technology strand of the computing curriculum. It's an amazing resource, which I'm going to look into using a lot more next year. Obviously, part of part of this and a part of what we're talking about is it's teachers having time to go and look at these resources and knowing they're there. I mean, it's not easy by any stretch of the imagination, and the fact that I've only introduced 3 new ones this year shows you that you need the time to go and have a look at these things, to go and set them up, be familiar on how to use them. But what I would say is, once you've set it up once you've got your head around how to use it, it's integrated with your Google Drive and your Google Classroom, and you'll be able to use it all the time, anytime, anywhere that a child can log into their Google account or an educator can log into their account. It is available to use. I think that's amazing. I will stop my screen. And I think that's the key thing. Google Classroom provides a platform for educators to share any form of content with their children or with adults that they're talking to. And I think that's amazing. And I think that's kind of what, for me, tilts it over the edge in terms of using Microsoft Teams or using Zoom or just using Google Meet. There's so many additional benefits, and it is built for education, and that's the key thing. And something that's built for education is obviously going to support educators. And I know that if you do have any issues, which I've had in the past, if you get in contact with Google and the education team, they'll be working away in the background trying to sort it out. It's constantly monitored, constantly updated, constantly new things added. And with this digital literacy and the white paper, it's an amazing resource that people can use to really start targeting those digital literacy gaps that children have and adults have, as a foundation, not a solution, a foundation to start educating and improving children's literacy and digital literacy via Google Classroom.
No, absolutely. How do you tackle early years?
Early years is slightly different. I know that lots of although computing is no longer in the EYFS framework, they've completely taken it out. I still think it's incredibly important to still have those technological skills and still expose children to using technology. In EYFS, we use something called Tapestry, which I'm sure every single EYFS teacher in the country has heard of. It's very easy to use. Teachers have it on their iPads. They take a picture of what the child's doing. They upload it to a portfolio. But next year, I know that we're going to be looking at pushing out Google Classroom to year 1 to year 6. We're not going to do it in EYFS purely because why change something if it's working? For the time being, the reception teachers are quite happy using Tapestry. They're quite confident using Tapestry. If it's working at the moment, it wouldn't make sense to change it. Nope. But I know that if Google Classroom will constantly get better, constantly be improved, there may be a point where Google Classroom takes over Tapestry, that Google Classroom will provide more than Tapestry will. I don't know. It might happen, it might not. But until that point, it doesn't seem to me beneficial to change something. But I know that Google Classroom is constantly getting better and constantly doing new things and constantly providing new things to add to your educational setting. And talking about the resources we've talked about in the past, like Google Sites, Google Drawings, Jamboard, all of those different things that we can look at in more detail if people want to. It's only a matter of time before I think Google may even start thinking about tackling the early years and the lower levels of education and providing something for them. Because I know that Google Classroom probably, I would say, is more Key Stage 2 friendly. I'm not sure if you'd agree with that. It does require a certain level of ability to manipulate, to work your way around the software. But at the same time, it is very straightforward. And the earlier you expose a child to something, the more likely they're going to pick it up quicker, which is, I think, is a key.
No, I mean, that, yeah, it totally makes sense. And I've had, it's definitely something that I've come across when I'm working with schools to deliver their computing curriculum or basically technology in general. And the way I've circumvented that in the past is I've worked with schools instead of having the early years use Google Classroom, because it can be, like you said, it's beyond them sometimes.
Yeah.
Or at least you need to build up to it. So instead of that, I work with the schools to create an EYFS site. And we have a nursery and reception, and they use that as like I talked about the intranet on one of the previous podcasts, is a outward facing website that parents and staff can use to drop the learning that the children are going to do. So it's whatever planning the staff have got, whatever they want to be able to access at any point, and harness that extra work that parents undertook during lockdown, and those extra skills and that knowledge of being able to deliver phonics and be able to deliver whatever to those earliest children. It's a way of harnessing those extra skills that parents have got. So one of the things I work with a school is straight away when I'm working with them, I create this computing site, and I break this down into key stages. I put useful links on there, and I put vocab and terminology, and this is what I do. This is what you and I are going to be doing. It's going to be part of that in our meetings in this next 6 weeks. But straight away, you got an EYFS link. I try and break down and if I go on to digital literacy, I break down what I think we should be targeting on for early years. This is key stage 1, sorry, but go back. The best way, and off the back of how I think you should target computing, is off vocab.
Yeah.
Because so what I did was take vocab and terminology and break down into each key stage. So you got EYFS, key stage 1, and then key stage 2. And if we can understand what this terminology means and give it a definition, it gives you a basis in which to deliver that learning. So a site like this, or a EYFS site that's outward facing, is a good way of not having the children work on Google Classroom, but using the Google framework, because this is on a Google site, to deliver learning that you can push out in school, but have parents supplement outside of school. Because you're both looking at using the same resource to deliver learning to children. Also good is I can stick some useful links on here, which is always something that's taken up well with staff. Like this Leo Labs, if you get a chance, have a look, because this just gives you a list it just shows you a visual representation of all the satellites that are around planet Earth at the moment. But staff like a good freebie and some links. But this again goes through using I've got it here somewhere, Seesaw, but using that within Google Classroom. So if you take Seesaw on, let me just stop sharing this. If you take Seesaw for early years, I have the Chromebooks open up, and it opens up the landing page for early years is Seesaw. So straight away, the children are circumventing the sign-in. Like this is for obviously for early years, but it's circumventing the sign-in process, doing all these other things that they can then use the touch screen to create a photo or drawing or video, or even use the word processing software. And that's, again, they're using a Chromebook or they're using a Windows laptop, and then they're already being sucked into that digitally literate world, which allows you, when you start getting to years 1 and 2, to have a bit of a head start.
Yeah. And I think exposure is the key. If a child doesn't use something or hasn't used something before, that's automatically a barrier that's going to limit what you can teach a child. And if we can, I really like that and that's something I'm looking at in more detail next year, really focusing on that vocabulary. Because if a child understands where I'm trying to go with something, and they understand the terminology I'm using. If I stand up at the front of a classroom and talk about the central processing unit of a computer, most of the children in year 4 classroom, it'll go straight over their heads. What on earth is Mr. Poynton talking about? But if a child has an understanding of what processing means and what a unit is when we talk about computing, they're more likely to be able to access what I'm talking about. And I think that's incredibly important. Vocabulary and an understanding of key words builds a foundation for what children are going to learn about. And that's in all subjects across the board, and anything we learn about as well.
Yeah. So that is something that I'm working on. It will be something that we will be working together on in the next 6 weeks, because behind the scenes, it's great having the terminology, but I'm trying to have those as smart buttons. So when you click them, it will give you a definition. And then from the terminology and the definition, for staff, it will give them the lead to be able to go on to the next thing and find out, okay, so I understand what this is now, because some staff members might not know what they are, and it allows them to incorporate that into their everyday teaching. Right, I think we've chatted about just literally trying to make out how important it is just to be part of the everyday life.
Yeah.
As we grow, I would I think if maybe we should start focus on some actual lessons on how to do something. So here we go. There's a task for you, Jamie, for next week.
Homework. It's half term.
Absolutely right. So task for you next week is to set up a little lab and have something to show us on how to do something. Maybe something simple as like I did there was set up a class. Set up a class, distribute some, set up a class, invite somebody, or create an assignment, push that assignment out, make it so that the document drops into everybody's some orientation for Google Classroom.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be a good starting point, because then we can start working on how we can incorporate different things, and maybe building our own little curriculum as time goes on, of going, this is how we would attack this part of the curriculum.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some homework.
You basically told me to design a Bite of Education computing curriculum. Thanks, James.
Yeah.
I'm sure I can do that in a week.
But yeah, we will do the just-in-time teaching method, and yeah, I think that would be good. So, anything else from you, Jamie?
No, I just think it's incredibly important that people really start to focus on implementing digital literacy in everything they do across the curriculum, in any aspect of a lesson, any time of the day at school, any opportunity that a child can be exposed, obviously within in what's the word, in not overdoing it, but if a child can use a computer or a technological resource to benefit and to support learning, why are we not doing it? Is it because we can't be bothered, or is it because it's just we just didn't think of it? I think that's quite often the case, and I think it's just, if I have one thing to say, it's use technology to support the curriculum, because it'll make your life 10 times easier.
Yeah, well, like we said at the start, I think it was the first episode, that teachers are time poor. Learning a new skill is not, they've got a job to do. So if we can help facilitate that in any way, that'd be great. I think what I will do, if you do it from the delivering computing point of view, I'll think of some streamlining sort of processes that teachers can use to make their own life easier. So,
Yep.
We'll tackle it from both ends.
All right.
Well, have a beautiful rest of the evening, Jamie, and thank you all for listening. Any questions, please write in, because that would be good. Please leave a comment or a like. And if you would like to hear more, please click the subscribe button and the little bell to be notified when we release the next video, which is normally on a Thursday-ish time of the week. And have a great bank holiday weekend. See you all.